Okay, so we just talked about the neurons. And if you look here on this slide behind me, um, remember that neurons are going to receive and send action potentials. So they are the main workers of the nervous system. Remember also that they're made primarily of three parts. They have a cell body, and then they have this receiving branch called a dendrite. They have many of those usually. And then they have one major output structure called an axon. Now we're going to go into the other types of cells, and they're called neuroglial or glial cells. Neuroglial or glial cells are going to be doing all those other jobs that the nervous system may need. So it says they surround the neurons, they hold them in place. They're going to supply them with things like nutrients, oxygen. They're going to be insulators. They may even act as part of the immune system and fight off pathogens. They're going to be structural. So they're going to be playing an important role in the nervous system. They're just not moving action potentials. That's the job of a neuron. So let's look at the different types of glial cells. There are several of them, and they all have different specific jobs. All right, so here is handout 12B, and I just have each of these major glial cells separated into these handouts. So the first glial cell is called an astrocyte. Astrocytes are kind of star-shaped. They kind of look like the dendrite portion of our neuron. But they're star-shaped, and their primary job is to be a structural support. So they're going to grab on and they're going to hold neurons in place. They're also going to metabolize neurotransmitters. Now, we mentioned neurotransmitters back in the muscle chapter. Remember, they are molecules that are going to act as keys that unlock and allow an action potential to move. Now, there are a whole bunch of different neurotransmitters that we're going to get to in this chapter, but these astrocytes can metabolize and create these different neurotransmitter molecules. Another important thing that the astrocytes can do is it says they form the blood-brain barrier. You have a barrier between your bloodstream and your brain, and it blocks certain substances from getting to your brain and causing harm. The thing that makes up this blood-brain barrier are these astrocytes. So, for example, there are a bunch of different types of molecules that are floating around in your blood that cannot move into your brain tissue. It's prevented from moving in by these astrocytes. So in this picture, you can actually see the astrocyte grabbing onto a capillary, and it will prevent things like large molecules, potential toxins, that kind of thing, from moving into your brain. Now, the blood-brain barrier doesn't stop everything from moving into your brain. Astrocytes, for example, cannot prevent alcohol molecules from moving into the brain. And so alcohol will be floating through the bloodstream. They will get to the brain, and they can actually sneak through the blood-brain barrier and go around those astrocytes. And that's why a person gets drunk, is because the alcohol molecule is a toxin, and it can move past that brain barrier, blood-brain barrier into your brain tissue, and then it can start affecting those brain cells. And those brain cells start dysfunctioning, and that's what being drunk is, essentially. So those are the astrocytes. The next glial cell are called ependymal cells. Ependymal cells are similar to epithelial cells. They kind of look like skin cells. I guess that's kind of how they get their name too, ependymal. But they are similar to epithelium, and they have really one big job. They're going to make cerebral spinal fluid. There's these structures that we're going to get to a little bit later called choroid plexuses. These are structures in your brain that make cerebral spinal fluid. We'll also talk about cerebral spinal fluid. It's basically just a protective fluid. But the ependymal cells are going to be located in these structures called choroid plexuses, and they are going to make cerebral spinal fluid. So that's their job. The next glial cell is called an oligodendrocyte. Oligodendrocytes, it says they're the most common glial cell, and they are going to make an insulator called myelin. Myelin is a protein that wraps around the neurons, and you can see it, it's this yellow example right here. But myelin is an insulation. It's kind of like the plastic coating on the wire of your headphones. They act as an insulator to make those axons more efficient and to prevent things from shorting out. We don't want action potentials moving where we don't want them. We want them moving down the axon, down through the neuron. And the myelin sheath acts as a insulator to help this occur. Now, oligodendrocytes are going to produce myelin in our central nervous system. So the central nervous system contains these oligodendrocytes that produce the myelin sheath. So that's the third type of glial cell. Now, the fourth type and the final one for this handout are cells called satellite cells. Satellite cells are named after where they're located. If this is a bologna slice or cross-section of a neuron, these satellite cells are going to be located around the neuron. They're kind of wrapped around the neuron, and they are going to just provide structural support. They're going to hold that axon in place. They're going to allow proper alignment and just hold everything in its proper position. So that is the first 4 of our glial cells. I like to kind of think of glial cells as the entourage. They are the support system. So imagine like the neuron is a pop star, and all of the helpers, the roadies, the bus driver, everyone that's taking care of that pop star, those are the glial cells. And so we still have a couple more to go through. That'll be in handout 12C.